Hello, welcome to my channel, Save Infinity. In this video, I just wanted to kind of briefly talk about like the idea of the rapture, and just kind of talk about like my own kind of downloads and understandings of what a sort of like rapture type event like means, from my point of view and perspective, with many of these sort of, ideas and whatever you want to call it. There's so many different interpretations and perspectives, and also just we live in an infinite realm with so many possibilities and versions of reality. There's also literally like so many different perspectives and actual different circumstances of ways these sort of things do kind of manifest or like eventuate and what have you. So I'm not saying that this is the hard facts of a rapture event or anything like that, but just from my perspective and downloads, what it kind of means and how such a thing does kind of manifest into reality and what that kind of looks like. To my understanding, isn't it's not like we all wake up one day and like literally half the population has disappeared or something, and that it's such an instant bang overnight event in that extreme, but more that as more people do awaken and ascend, or however you want to kind of define it, that they do kind of become more multidimensionally active in that sense of becoming more fluid across various timelines and things like that, rather than kind of being operating, flowing down their kind of more strict 3D linear type timeline. They kind of are able to energetically branch out a little more and kind of weave in and out between a lot more of a multitude of timelines. And so as more people kind of follow their own path and become more into alignment and things like that, energetically and what have you, the energetic making up of of your energetic body or what what have you, kind of also does influence what sort of timelines you kind of resonate to and align to. And in the past, with majority of people kind of not going through these sort of processes, their energy, or however you want to call it, kind of stayed pretty much the same in kind of a stagnant sort of position. So it did just kind of keep flowing along a very predictable, set out linear 3D type timeline. But the more people kind of come into alignment energetically and heal and ascend and all that sort of jazz, it kind of broadens up and shifts the way that they do align and what sort of realities and timelines they do kind of align and shift into and what have you. And so with more people doing that en masse and getting to levels where they start doing that on greater and more extreme levels, if you will, like greater levels of developmental change, it can then appear from many perspectives of as if people have disappeared suddenly, or they're no longer like contactable or reachable or an array of things, when it's really more that they've kind of shifted into another timeline that other group of people trying to perceive them may not be resonant to, and so it can appear like suddenly people start going missing, kind of like a divergence of timelines. Almost like the way I like to think of it, kind of like the sorting hat in Harry Potter, and how the hat goes on and kind of assesses their energy and what have you, and places them into, the relevant house. It kind of like that sort of process going on as we ascend and awaken, that our energy kind of gets shifted and sorted into, an array of different timelines, and we kind of all diverge a bit, we, split out and go into an array of various timelines. And as we kind of do that, certain groups of people and individuals and what have you can kind of be swift and shade and sorted into different shiftings of timelines, which can kind of appear like suddenly there's all this chaos of different people going missing or different things shifting up or what have you. And I like to think of it as kind of more of, you know, people kind of suddenly being shifted more to their more resonant and more aligned timelines. So, you know, rather than people that were kind of grouped together in more karmic cycles going down this kind of path, they kind of, you know, align to their own individuated resonant timelines. They kind of split off into, you know, different realities, kind of like the analogy I've used before with like the Harry Potter 9 3/4 platform. You know, it's kind of like they just like dupe off into like another timeline or another reality, you know, and shift as we get kind of, you know, sorted by the sorting hat into areas that are more resonant to us in our own journey and our own pathway and our own like energetic signatures. And then, you know, the more we kind of all do that, and the more that time goes along, the more we all kind of do converge as well, like back again. Like some timelines will kind of, you know, shift and weave back in as the sorting process, you know, continues. So, you know, from my point of view and perspective and downloads and what have you, it's not so much just a dramatic, everyone just, you know, splits into these different various timelines and then are lost forever. It's kind of like a weaving in and out process where, you know, some people will shift and change to some timelines and other timelines, and, you know, some of those people may end up, you know, crossing timelines again as they come into, you know, resonance for whatever reasons, you know, whether it's, you know, alignment or further lessons of growth or what have you. But it's kind of just like rather than being more on these set tracks that we have been on for so long, it's kind of more of a splitting and a weaving and of all these different timelines going in and out of each other until we all get into a more, you know, ascended sort of process and more into alignment. We kind of keep going through this shifting and weaving process for a while, and then things kind of, you know, shift into more resonant pockets again, as then we kind of come more into more streamlined timelines again. And I kind of, you know, from my understanding, like the other side of that is that more heaven on earth reality, where then, you know, after all that shifting and weaving of the rapture, if you will, you know, we all kind of eventually then settle into more aligned timelines and communities and what have you. And then from there, it's kind of like we all, you know, establish different little pockets of earth realities that all kind of become our own like little individual heaven on earth experiences as we, you know, resonate and are aligned with the energies around us. And so another really important reason why, you know, things like the art of non-attachment and stuff that, you know, many spiritual leaders and what have you have talked about in the past with these sort of journeys and experiences and stuff is so important. You know, not getting too attached to certain specific outcomes or certain specific people or energies or what have you, like being around you or being in your reality, because those things can start to shift and change a lot more dramatically. And there is, you know, a purpose and a rhyme and reason for it all, behind it all. And, you know, for some it may mean, you know, that you do, you know, connect with them in a more aligned level, you know, later down the track on another timeline, you know, or it could be, you know, that you don't, you know, really see those energies at all for, you know, the rest of your experience in this vessel, you know, or it could be that, you know, you come across, you know, the same sort of energies again, but in different like vessels, or, you know, a version of them from another timeline itself as well, that you could then come back into experience as well. So it's kind of like the same person, but, you know, a bit different. You know, there's a multitude of ways that these sort of things can kind of operate and fluctuate. So just not having that such an attachment to those sort of outside, you know, energies, you know, not meaning that you have to be completely like cold and isolated, but just not having such a strong attachment that it completely shatters your whole like system and world apart if, you know, certain things do drop and weave out of your access or out of your reality. And instead of having that more, you know, not an attachment per se, but just that more grounded alignment within yourself, you know, the kingdom within yourself, to be your stable foundation. Yeah, might leave this one here for now. It's a very like in-depth topic. We could go on for longer, but, you know, don't want to make the video too long. All right, I was sending you so much peace, love, light, and blessings as always.